A vocalista Rachel Goswell, da banda inglesa Slowdive, conversou com Fernando Dota, da Balaclava. Ela relembrou o começo da carreira, falou como foi assinar um primeiro contrato com uma gravadora grande, relembrou também sobre a cena alternativa do Reino Unido nos anos 90 e sobre a turnê de reunião do grupo.
Okay, Rachel, thanks for joining us on this great interview. It's I'm not a proper journalist or whatever. I'm just a promoter and a musician, but I'm happy to have you here joining us at Balaclava Digital. So first I wanted you to introduce yourself and then I can start the questions.
Okay, I'm Rachel Goswell and I am in Slowdive and Minor Victories and the Soft Cavalry. There you go, 3 bands.
Okay, I'm gonna start talking about the early days at first. How do you are there any musicians in your family? How do you start get involved in music?
My father used to play banjo in a jazz band, and he encouraged me greatly as a young girl. He taught me sort of basic chords on folk guitar. When I was around the age of 7, and I also did some classical guitar as well from the age of 7 through to about 12. So both my parents loved music, so yeah, I was just encouraged to do it.
And what kind of music did you used to listen at home?
Me?
Yeah, with your parents. Yeah,
my parents.
What do you remember from listening with them?
My parents were into a lot of folk music. So a guy called Gordon Lightfoot, this is going back to the 70s, early 80s, I guess. My mum loved John Denver, who I in turn loved, still do, actually. And my dad loved Dolly Parton. Mm-hmm. Sort of that kind of stuff. As far as bands I got into at a young age, I suppose ABBA were the first band for me, when I was under 10. Mm-hmm. That I really loved. Quite a lot of, I guess, early on, quite a lot of sort of just pop stuff. Yeah.
When you started composing, it was already on guitars or you were writing a lot of stuff? How was how do you get involved? I think I want to start a band.
Well, I got my first electric guitar when I was 13. Mm-hmm. And I did a morning paper round. And I was the only girl in my village at that time that did a morning paper round. So it was kind of groundbreaking for Sonning Common. And
which city was that?
Huh?
Which city? Where are you based at that time?
Oh, that was a small village called Sonning Common, which is very near Reading in Berkshire. Mm-hmm. And I met Neil at school. That's where we both went to school. We went to primary and secondary school together. And I think when I was 15, I learned piano a little bit. I kind of quit classical guitar at grade 3 when I was 12, and then decided I wanted to learn how to read the bass clef in music. So I then had piano lessons only for a couple of years, actually, and then I got very bored with it. But my parents bought me a little Yamaha keyboard. And it was at this point at school when I was 15, I decided at that point I then wanted to be in a band. But growing up, I had always loved music. I was quite solitary at school. I didn't really fit in. And I did get bullied quite a lot, actually, as well, when I was quite young, because I spent my early years in Wales. So I had a very thick Welsh accent, and my parents moved to England when I was 7, so I got bullied because I was different. And then I just morphed into a goth and, continued to get bullied because I was very different. Anyway, so I had a keyboard, decided I wanted to start a band, and our youth club at secondary school on Sundays, I knew they had like PA speakers and a drum kit and some equipment. So I encouraged a girlfriend of mine called Alison to come with me to try and start this band. And Neil was there. He was the youth leader's prefect. So he set the PA up for us. And I think he must have had a guitar, and there was an amp there. So we were just kind of messing around, and there was just really a handful of kids in our year group that could play instruments.
Yeah.
So that's kind of how it started, really.
Is that the Alison from the song?
No,
it's
not.
Another Alison.
I don't know who that Alison is. You'd have to ask Neil.
Okay. And like regarding the music scene that you were like at the time, what kind of like, were there clubs in this like around there to play, or like what kind of venues or house parties or?
We didn't play house parties. We never played house parties actually, but there were some small pubs that put gigs on. There was one called Cartoons that we played at regularly, and it probably only held about 50 people, but that was like a regular small venue in Reading during the late 80s. And there was a trade union club which was a bit bigger, so we kind of managed to get a lot of support slots, supporting bands, various bands, local bands. And then there's a club called the After Dark Club, which was where kind of all the known bands used to come. So we would go there and watch people like Spacemen 3 and Loop, things like that. Yeah. So that's really where we went for all our gigs. And I'm not sure what the capacity of that venue is. It's not big, maybe 200 or something. And it was through that we supported a band called 530, who had a guy from EMI Publishing there to see them, who was a friend of Alan McGee's. And he just happened to see us play. And I just happened to have a demo cassette on me that I'd kind of rushed home to get because somebody said, there's going to be record people there. And thank God I did, really. And and his name was Steve Walters. He saw us, loved us, and gave the tape to Alan, who then phoned us on, I think that gig was like Friday or Saturday, phoned us on the Monday. And Neil and I were living together at that point. And Neil answered, and it was, we were quite incredulous, really, because that tape had Slowdive and Avalyn on, and Avalyn 2. And those were our demos, and that is actually what ended up being the first EP.
That's awesome. Like you were telling me about like the beginning of mainly like the connection with Creation Records. So from there, like, have you released like anything before? Like, was it just a demo tape, and then that's the material you gave to Alan?
Yeah, we hadn't. I think we were on, like, there's a blue flexi disc with a couple of earlier songs on, "Take Me Down" and another song that the name escapes me. They were really, really Valentine's-y, and we did let Alan hear those as well, but he's like, nah, they're really Valentine's-y. Can't use them. Yeah. The other ones are better. And that was like a flexi disc. I can't remember who put it out now. It's such a long time ago. But I mean, other than that, no.
What year was that? Was it 89?
Don't know. Probably.
Yeah.
Probably. This is a long time ago. I'm 50 next year.
No worries. but how was the feeling like when you entered like Creation, when you were signed? Was there a feeling like I'm gonna be big, or like how was the general atmosphere like? And also with the bandmates or like the bands on the label, like, because it got like bigger and bigger, because I don't know, how was it in the beginning, like the pre-shoegaze era, like?
Yeah, well, Yeah, I mean, we were really excited, obviously. We were 19. I think Alan maintains we were 16 when he met us, which isn't true. We were 19, actually. And, Creation was upstairs above a sweatshop, basically, where people were making, I don't know what they were making, clothes or fabric stuff. And in East London, in sort of Hackney. And, I mean, My Bloody Valentine were on the label, who were one of our favourite bands, and the Jesus and Mary Chain, what the hell were they? Mary Chain, Primal Scream, all those bands were amazing, and they were, bands that we looked up to.
Before getting signed to Creation, did you already tour with them, or was it like from then? Like
no.
Okay.
We've never done. We've only done one show with My Bloody Valentine. Well, it wasn't even on the same night. We played at Desert Days Festival 2-3 years ago, and they were the night after. So I stayed out an extra day so I could see them. It was brilliant. But we didn't play with any of those bands. We did tour, our first tour. I can't remember whether it was Slowdive or the Telescopes, because we did a week with each band. I can't remember which one was first. And that was brilliant. And really good fun. And I loved Slowdive. Actually, they were pretty much my favourite band at that time.
And was there like I remember that Slowdive, they kind of like made it in the US.
But they toured with Soundgarden, didn't they? And
yeah, maybe Smashing Pumpkins, I don't know, but like
possibly,
that scene. Yeah, but was there any like intention, like I need to make it in America in order to make it like for real, or because I feel like a lot of like UK bands, sometimes they are really praised in UK, but sometimes it's hard to get out to reach out like North American audience.
I think that the thing for us was, I mean, I don't think we ever had the mindset of we need to do this or that to make it. And in fact, we had a terrible manager, I have to say, and an awful accountant who bankrupted us and had loads of problems. And we were too young and naive, really, to understand much at all. And Creation had signed, this deal with SBK Records, and we were the guinea pig band. I think that's quite well documented in Creation documentaries. So we were like the guinea pigs. And I think the first US tour we ended up doing was supporting Blur, which was amazing. And we were all kind of around the same age and at the same point in a way at that time. But we were like constantly getting the rug pulled out from under us in terms of tour support and just, well, a lot of stuff really, because we had, I think we were supposed to tour, I think for like a month with Blur or something like that, and we ended up only doing a week because just before we were due to go out there, SBK turned around and said, no, we're not giving you the tour support, you need to do it. And so there were just lots of things that sort of messed up. And it was very frustrating. And by the time Souflaki came out, I think the interest in us, for the most part, Creation had waned in terms of the people that worked there. They weren't interested, and it was quite obvious to us. There's like, with the exception, I think, of a couple of people really. And we ended up touring in the States with no tour support. We managed to pull a tour together on our own, and I think we just broke even, and that was it. I mean, I never saw any money from gigs that we did back in the 90s. We never saw anything like that. We had a publishing deal with EMI that gave us a bit, and advances from Creation, but in terms of like making any money from anything, we never really did. And again, maybe that's the bad management and the bad accounting. I don't know really. We were just too naive.
Yeah.
Even though we sat in accountant meetings and thought our tax was being paid, it transpired it wasn't for like 5 years.
Yeah.
And that accountant ended up in prison because he was sued by Primal Scream, Suede, and various other bands. So,
whoa.
Yeah, it wasn't great.
And like, but when the media started like with the term like shoegaze, how did those bands like Slowdive, MBV, Rides? How do you guys feel about like the term, and did that help like promoting those bands? Like I mean, the hype behind it, or just it was like a lame term?
Yeah, I mean, I think it was a journalist coined phrase in a review of a band called Moose, actually, where that was originated from. Yeah, I mean, none of the bands liked the term. It you know, and again, it's well documented in the UK music press that shoegazing was really met with a lot of derision. And for us, particularly, I think we bore the brunt of a lot of that. The Valentines were kind of above that, really, I think, and Ride were a bit more pop and a bit different, and they got a lot more sort of radio play and were way more successful on a commercial level than, I mean, we just weren't.
Because also like Slowdive, I feel like the sound has always been associated with shoegaze, but at the same time, it's like has a lot of dream pop and ambient and experimental music. And was there like a conscious decision of you guys like to not to do like only the wall sound, like wall guitar sound, like because of your influences or like the way that you compose or neo, like to do something more soft and that kind of thing?
Yeah, I think it's just a very natural progression for us as a band. And you talk about dream pop, dream pop didn't exist then, and I'm still not even sure I really know what dream pop is. Ambient music, yes. I mean, that with, Pygmalion does reflect, a lot really of particularly what Neil was listening to at that time, because he was the main songwriter. And, bands like Talk, wonderful. Can you hear that? That's my cat. Lola. All right, Lola. She'll probably jump up in a minute. I just think it's sort of a natural progression, really, experimenting with pedals, and we've like effects units like the Yamaha FX 500. And I think when we did Slowdive and Avalyn initially, I think, particularly with Avalyn, because that was like really just us, for want of a better word, jamming, which doesn't sound right for Slowdive, but just playing, and that just came out, and that really seemed to pinpoint, I think, the direction that we were going in, and what served us the best. And it's fun playing with guitar pedals.
Yeah, I love it. And was there like it was the same time that you guys worked with Brian Eno? Or
yeah, that was on Souflarky. That was Souflarky, and actually only Neil met him. And he spent 2 or 3 days in the studio with him.
How was the experience?
Well, I think it's quite weird, and at that point, I don't think Neil really understood the enormity of who Brian Eno is. Just didn't get it until a few years later, and I was like, oh shit. So Brian put a clock on the mixing desk and just said to Neil, right, I just want you to just play whatever comes into your head. I don't know for how long he had to do that, but I think he found it quite a strange experience anyway. And came out with, came back to us with a few pieces of work or ideas. which turned into some of the songs on Souvlaki.
Yeah, that's awesome. And yeah, I love the records, and I feel like it's really influential till these days. Like it's how quite often do you listen, like do you read that Slowdive is a reference for like really young bands? Because I feel like the whole shoegaze comeback, how did it came up? Do you think like was it like My Bloody Valentine playing Primavera Sound, and that kind of started like all over again? I don't know.
I don't know. What year did they play? I can't remember.
I guess they played 2012 or 13.
Okay.
Yeah.
See, I had my son in 2010, and I was very much in mum mode until we came back, actually, and I wasn't paying any attention to the music industry, to be honest. I kind of completely dipped out because of my family situation. So I can't comment on that. I know that, obviously, I remember the days of MySpace, being on there and seeing shoegazing as a genre. And I remember being really shocked that it was a genre on the internet, and it was actually seen in a very positive way, which was amazing, really, after all those years of negativity when we were younger. And it was a lovely thing to see and to watch it grow. And we'd been asked before 2014 once or twice if we would consider reforming and doing gigs, and I'd always said no because I didn't see the point in it. But I think when Primavera came along for us and they asked us in 2013, at that point my son was just starting school, and the situation with him, because he has special needs, we were getting more support with him and things were becoming a little bit easier, so I could start thinking about other things.
And did you keep in touch with the band, like in the meantime, from the band?
Neil, yes, because
you had Mojave 3.
Mojave 3, yeah, we did that for 10 years. So we did keep in touch, and Nick and Christian very sporadically I kept in touch with. Simon I hadn't really kept in touch with for quite a long time. But it was lovely to, the first time that we met up all together again in the rehearsal room, which was in January 2014. It was quite a thing, really. And that first year was, I'd say, very special for all of us, and unexpected and mind-blowing, and and it was really that year that, for the first time, I would say, in my my career, my on-off career as a musician in my adult life, that it actually felt done properly, and actually we could potentially do this as a living properly for a bit anyway. So
but the main intention, like when you guys came back, the return was like, at first it was just like a reunion tour, not exactly like let's make an album.
Well, we right from the off we did talk about actually making another record, because we didn't we kind of felt if we were going to do it, then we should just go all in and actually do it properly. And we realised quite quickly from being offered Primavera, we thought we might do maybe 8 shows that year, do a few, and then look at doing a record. And we ended up, I don't know how many shows we ended up doing that year, 50 or 40 or something ridiculous. And it really snowballed. So we always had in mind that we wanted to do another record, and we didn't want to do just the reunion band thing without anything new to give. Because although it works for a lot of bands, we didn't want it to be just a nostalgia trip, and that was it. I think we all felt very invested. That's Lola again. We all felt very invested, in working together. Sorry, I'm just trying to stop my cat walking. We all felt very invested, in it. So, yeah.
I have to say, I was at Primavera. I was lucky to be there when you played in 2014, and it was insane. It was just it was mind blowing to see Slowdive live, because I never thought I would see that, and the whole vibe in the audience was super emotional. People from all ages. I'm 34 now, but it's from mid-20s to really I don't know, 60s.
It was incredible. Yeah, it was incredible for us because just before we came on stage, and our manager had said to us, you need to have a backdrop, and we laughed at him. We're like, what do you mean we need to have a backdrop? You need to have one with your band name on, so that when it's on YouTube, everyone knows who you are. And we're like, oh, right, okay. It's a totally new world. And when, I don't know whether the backdrop went down or anyway, our name kind of came up just before we came on, and then the crowd, huge crowd, cheering. I'm going to get Lola down. And we were stood waiting to go on. And I think it was at that point, when the crowd just went mad, that the penny dropped for all of us, and then we suddenly thought, oh God, this is a really big deal, and it was hard doing that, getting through that gig without crying for me, because I'm terribly emotional anyway, and if I see anyone crying at our gigs, which does happen quite a lot, I have to say, men and women of all ages, I tend to kind of turn around and walk to my amp to compose myself so I can carry on singing, because I really, I feel it. I totally feel it, and it's a strange thing, but
it's really cool also, because I remember that when Slowdive performed at the Balaclava Festival in Brazil that we promoted, I remember that you were constantly going on the side of the stage during the show. Maybe you went 3 times, and as a promoter, I was kind of worried of what happened. And when I asked you at the end of the show, you were saying that you were really emotional about the audience, and that you had to go there because you were almost crying. So
there you go. I remember that gig. It was mental. It was like being in the Beatles or something. No, I don't think we've ever had a response like that from an audience anywhere in the world. So yeah,
that's amazing to hear. And how was the feeling before, after so many, so long, putting out a record? Because I remember that the South American tour had happened a week later, a week after the album was released. So it was a huge expectation for everyone. So to see how the songs were performed live, and also the old fans asking if you're gonna perform only the new stuff, and but it was perfect. It was, and it's really a really big mark for us at Balaclava History.
Yeah, it was great. We loved coming over there, and I hope one day we can come back, obviously, because that was our first time in Brazil as well, and South America. And it was quite a mind-blowing and very memorable experience for everybody in the band.
That's awesome. And regarding the record from 2017, what were there all the new ideas, all fresh ideas when you were composing, or did you get something that you were working on for years?
No, it was all new. All of it was new. Yeah.
And where was it recorded?
We kind of grabbed a few weekends here and there in a couple of different studios. One in a very small one in Weston-super-Mare where we did the Slowdive and Avalon demo. Actually, we went back there to do some bits and bobs, and we spent 2015, because obviously we were so busy in 2014 touring. 2015 ended up being Neil did a lot of writing. He took some time out to do some writing, and then we took 2015 off. I think we did a handful of gigs, and Neil spent that year just writing and doing sort of other bits and bobs. And we regrouped in January 2016, but we were having, because we've all got children, so we were having to work around our kids, and we all live in different parts of the country, so that also makes it very challenging. So we did the bulk of the recording at Courtyard Studios in Abingdon, which is where we recorded Just for a Day, Morning Rise, Holding Our Breath EP. We did a lot of recording there, and Pygmalion as well. A lot of that was done there, and some of Souflaki. So we just went back there, not with the same engineer, Chris Hufford, because at that point it's his studio, I guess, still. And he was an engineer, but he went on to manage Radiohead. So he no longer does the recording side of things. So worked with a different engineer. And interestingly, the engineer we worked with on it, Ian, lives in the village that Neil and I grew up in. It's not far from there. So it's quite funny. Yeah.
That's awesome.
Kind of, we decided we came sort of full circle.
And how was like touring after so long? Like, was it tiring? Because you did so many shows and festivals. Like, how was traveling? You did like a world tour, like tiring and.
Yeah, very tiring. Very tiring. Great fun. I mean, I'm not very good at traveling. I hate flying, which is really unfortunate, considering the amount of planes we must have got on. In the last few years. I have really sort of quite bad anxiety when it comes to planes. I struggle to sleep on sleeper buses, moving buses. So when we tour in America, it's always on a bus, and it's exhausting. I just can't sleep when they're moving. And some of those drives are so long, you know, you leave a gig and then you might still be driving at 10 o'clock the following morning, and I'm just lying in my bunk wide awake thinking, I'm too old to not be getting my sleep. This could be dangerous for my health. The travel for me is very hard, but I love doing the gigs.
And did you get to see like any live bands that you really wanted to, like during those festivals and stuff, or just like I want to chill at the backstage?
Loads of bands at festivals. I think that's the joy of festivals, isn't it? There are just so many bands playing. I saw Bjork somewhere. I mean, there's loads of bands we've seen. I probably wouldn't be able to tell you exactly where in the world they were particularly. But yeah, a lot of stuff, and it was good to see the Pixies again after having not seen them since the 90s, I think. Midlake I really loved, and so one of the Primavera Porto show, they played there actually, and that's how I met Jesse Chandler, who played in Midlake, and you know, we're 5 years later we're firm friends. So it's nice. Mogwai, saw loads, and obviously Stu. I mean, I love all of them. I love them all, and you know, obviously did Minor Victories with Stuart, and Martin drummed for us live as well, and you know, some really firm friendships have come out of the last few years, which has been lovely.
And you mentioned the Pixies, and I was meaning to ask you, like, by that time, like, there were a lot of girls in the 90s in bands like Kim Gordon, Kim Deal, Kathleen Hanna. And how do you feel like about that time? Like, because there was major, like, male bands in festivals. The lineups were like majority male bands, and that changed. That it's been changing in a few years. But how do you feel back then, like to be like one of the only girls like performing with bands? And was there like how was the feeling? Like, I don't know, the atmosphere about that. And did you feel like worried in a way, like, or confused? I don't know.
I think at that time in the 90s I didn't, because I mean, the bands you mentioned, like, well, Sonic Youth, Lush, Pixies, Throwing Muses,
Elastica.
Yeah, Elastica. I mean, there's sort of bands I would put into like different genre of music, like Sleeper and Echo Belly and things like that. There were actually a lot of female artists about. For Slowdive, we only ever played one festival, I think, and that was in Slough, which is nothing major to write home about. So I was not in a situation where I was playing festivals and seeing a lot of other bands at that point. It just didn't happen. I guess from a touring point of view, with Slowdive, I think all the bands we probably played with were male. I mean, I've always just so used to being surrounded by men, being in a band with 4 men. Mainly our crew, up until recent years, have always been men. I only... And actually, in sort of 20 years, until we came back, I'd only met one female guitar tech on the road. You know, I've met a few more since now coming back, and I think it is different now, and I think it is harder for women. And, you know, the disparity is still very real at festivals, but it's also it's kind of being addressed, isn't it? There's a lot of people being very, very vocal about it on social media, saying that things need to change, and that, you know, there is no reason really why you can't do a 50-50 ratio of male-female.
Yeah. I agree. Yeah.
And there's no excuse really now.
Yeah.
Unless it's, unless it's a really, I'm going to say a shit festival, but it's the wrong word. Unless it's, no, I don't know. Maybe we shouldn't say it. But there is no excuse anymore.
Yeah, I agree. And is there like any women specific, or like which artists, like women artists, female artists that interest you at the time? Like it was kind of like inspiring for you in a way.
When I started?
Yeah, like when you started in Slowdive era, like.
Yeah, I mean, for me, my first females, I mean, when I look back on it, they were always, I think quite strong female role models. ABBA, naturally, 2 ladies in ABBA, they were amazing. I went from ABBA to Grace Jones, which reasonably well documented, which may surprise people, but I kind of discovered her when I was 12, 13 and just completely fell in love with her. And I used to save up my paper round money, go into Reading to the record shop and buy vinyl. And like over like the course of, I don't know how many months, 6 months, just every month I'd go and buy another one of her records. And I loved her. I thought she was fantastic and just really out there and mental and an amazing singer. And, you know, she started her career on doing cabaret on cruise ships. And last year was the first time I ever saw her live. I was really crying. She was incredible. She played at a festival in Bristol. And she was only on for about an hour. And it was like one of the best gigs I've ever seen. She's just an incredible woman. Still, she's incredible. I don't know, her voice, everything about her is amazing. I just love her. I still love her. So clearly she was a massive influence for me singing. And I used to sing along to her records, and particularly La Vie en Rose. I just used to know it off by heart, and I would sing and try and hit all those same notes and in front of the mirror, imagining there was an audience, because that's all I ever wanted to do was be in a band from a really young age. And then from Grace, it went probably quite obviously to Susie Sue.
Mm-hmm.
So I went into my goth period, and another iconic female. And
Do you follow any like new female artists? Like, do you have any favorites?
There's a few that I like. I really love Soak. Have you heard Soak?
Yeah.
Brilliant. I love Arlo Parks.
I love her too.
Really, like everything I've heard, I've just loved. And I bought her EP pink vinyl the other week, actually. Nadine Shah, I think is fantastic. Gosh, I mean, there's going to be loads. I'd have to look on my phone because my memory's not what it was. But I mean, those three particularly really stand out for me in the last 2-3 years.
And how was the featuring with the participation with American football? How did it came up? Like, I love that song. Yeah,
it was great fun. They emailed. They just got in contact with our manager and asked if I would be interested in doing it. And
did you know the band before? Like, did you?
I didn't. I hadn't heard of them. But somebody who works in our management team, his favourite band ever, and he was just so excited. And and I heard the track, and my kind of prerequisite with doing anything really is if I really like something, then I'll do it. And if I don't, then I will pass. And I did really like it. And I just did it at home. It's like a lot of my vocals, like the Minor Victory album, all of my vocals were done at my house. Slowdive stuff, most of it was done in the studio. I did some bits at home. It's just really easy, really, to record at home these days. Makes the geographical kind of distance doesn't matter.
Yeah.
Which is what's actually a wonderful thing. Like this interview, there's a point in case it's easy to do.
And have you been working in new material? Like
yes. Well, we did have studio time booked in April this year that we had to cancel, obviously due to COVID.
The Slowdive, you mean?
Yes, Slowdive. Okay. Yeah. So we are imminently going to resume. Now our children have finally started school this week, but it is the how long have we got until a potential second lockdown scenario? So yeah, we're going to crack on.
So probably studio only 2021, or
hopefully, yeah. I mean, that was always our plan, actually. So in terms of a release date, nothing has changed, despite COVID. It's just, we would have hoped to have had it finished by now, I guess.
Yeah, I hope you do, like, soon.
Yeah. Well, yeah.
Okay, send me the link when you have it.
Nah, could be a while. That could be a while.
Well, Rachel, thanks so much for joining us, and I appreciate a lot of your time. It's really an honor for me, like, because I'm a huge fan of Slowdive. I've seen so many shows, like, and I really want to bring you back to Brazil when you have a chance, like, to perform the new record. Thanks so much. We'll be there when we can be there. We would love to come. So thank you very much. Okay.